Alright, so I just decided to go ahead and make a tier list video for champions of Glassbreakers. Now, there has been a lot of meta shifting going on within the community. What team is best, what's viable, what's not. I'm going to give my proper take on this as a person who's been playing this game for a good while now. I've even taken some advice from some other top players as well, but we're going to go ahead and go through the tiers. So S+, pretty much uncontested. These champions in this tier clearly are above the rest. There's little to no downsides running these champions in your comp. S tier, pretty solid picks. You can't go wrong with them. There's a few flaws here and there with the team comps, but if you have the right team comp, you should be fine. And then there's A tier, which is viable. Champions that I feel are still viable and can be picked, but they're not the greatest, especially that sets himself apart from S tier and S+ tier. B tier is doable. These champions, in my opinion, are really bad and can get countered quite easily or have a lot of RNG in their kit, as you'll see later. They could still win, but it's going to be really tough. It's going to be an uphill battle. And then last but not least, C tier, flawed. I think these champions in this tier just need completely either reworked or buffed in some way, because I feel there's little to no chance of actually becoming viable without these changes. So we're going to start with Gwen and go all the way down to Jane. Honestly, for Gwen, best tank in the game by far. Gwen's ability allows her to soak up damage from surrounding teammates, so definitely the survivability is there. And when paired with other champions, can be a great pick, but without those extra champions, you know, she's just a health bar essentially, and you could easily avoid her. Pops her ability, you know, you can just walk away and then come back in. It's pretty easy to avoid, and for those reasons, I'm gonna probably put Gwen in A tier for viable, because I think it's a solid pick. I just don't think it's the best pick, but definitely the best tank in the game by far if that's the strategy you want to go. Next up on the list is Brel. Honestly, solid DPS for starters, as well as the ability Brel gives, shoots an arrow that deals a massive amount of damage to a single target, and it has a chance to root the enemy. And so, honestly, with being the best ranged unit, I think it's hits from 3 tiles away, I believe. It's either 3 or 4, but Brel is honestly a solid pick. I think Brel is the first one to go into the S tier, just for his range as well as his ability. Take the Sway Stone, if he so chooses to, can poke towers. Just really solid overall. His only weakness is his health pool, really, and I would say people can block the arrows, so you can have the champions block Brel's arrow, and it really just kind of destroys the strategy. So for instance, if you have Gwen block Brel's arrow, then that's the only downside I see with Brel. So for Bernard, his ability is a huge burst fireball that comes down and does a massive amount of damage. Really, really strong pick. Can really just take the Sway Stone, kill groups with AoE abilities, and really can control how you're moving your champions. So if you're all stacked up and Bernard just pops his ult or his ability, that's it. So for those reasons, he doesn't really have any weaknesses outside of other champions getting close to him, and so for that, I'm going to say uncontested in the S+ tier. And the reason I say uncontested is for the reason that he's uncontested on Sway Stone. Best Sway Stone champion in the game. He can sit by the Sway Stone, pop the Sway Stone with his ability, and just run off scot-free. Or he can deal damage to towers. He can deal damage to enemies coming to attack your tower. Covers a wide range. Just a solid pick overall. Really just one of the best champions to ever come out in the game. So that leaves us with Vendrix. So Vendrix's ability is really cool in the fact that he can surround himself with a firestorm. It does AoE around him as he moves around. He doesn't attack, which is kind of a bummer with his ability. So as he's using his ability, he can't do extra damage, only the AoE burn damage. But he's really good at holding objectives from the center. If he's not in the center, he's not doing much. But his ability is one of the fewest abilities in the game that can actually be countered with stun, and stun will be really prevalent in my tier list when it comes to fruition. It really disappoints me that I think Vendrix has to go into doable just because of his weaknesses. They are glaring. His ability can just get shut down by stuns, and without his ability, he's not really doing much damage or have as much health as Gwen, so it really just kind of shuts him off. So if he's facing up against a comp that doesn't have a stun, very viable. Very viable, which is why he's in the doable tier, because most people run stuns and they could just shut Vendrix's ability down and he's down to nothing. I guess that leads me into my next one, Reese, with the ability of healing, actually the only ability of healing. She can pick any champion to heal, as well as have an AoE heal, and really just breaks the game in a way to where you'll think that you're about to kill your opponent's champions. They just heal with Reese, and you now can't kill those champions, and you're actually in a losing position. And so for that, I think I'm going to put Reese in the uncontested tier, because nobody can stop Reese from healing outside of maybe a well-timed stun. But other than that, free roam. Once Reese heals, that's it. There's not a lot of counterplay with Reese. So strength, can pop her ability whenever she wants to. Weakness, doesn't have a lot of health, but that's not really a bad thing, because Reese doesn't need a lot of health. Once you pop the heal, that's it. You've pretty much already won. Alright, now on to my boy Chetlif. Now, I originally thought Chetlif was pretty decent. Honestly, really good at the start of the game. I'm now not leaning towards that. Chetlif's ability is a stun. He charges at the enemy, and it is a stun when it hits on contact, but only on his second ability. So his early game is a lot weaker than it used to be. Honestly, with Chetlif, having a stun makes him super viable. Doesn't have a lot of health or a lot of, damage, but having that stun is all that is really needed. He can just go in, stop Vendrix, for example, go in and stun somebody under tower, stun somebody for a combo. So I gotta put him in the solid tier, as he's just a really solid pick, pretty easy stun to land, pretty straightforward. So for Naji, his ability is quite unique in where he can knock out champions that are low on health. So he can just go one after the other, bam, 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 and just knock out a whole squad in one go and still have his ability up. Each time he knocks an opponent out with his ability, he gets a instant recharge on his ability, which makes him super good for finishing off people. So, Bernard, Braille, Chetlif, anybody who is dealing damage, Naji is there for cleanup duty. And so that's why I would also put Naji in the solid tier, because he's just a really solid pick. There's nothing more to say. He does a lot of damage. He's very fast. Not a lot of downsides outside of, he's only melee range, but he doesn't stun or do anything like that, contest Swaystone, but he is one of the best damage dealers in the game right now. And we will go to Mojo. His ability is a grapple. He is the only grapple champion in the game, therefore making him pretty unique as far as the champion abilities go. So with Mojo, he does have a lot of health. He does also have a really good ability, which is a hook that will allow you to pull enemies closer to you. For that reason, Mojo definitely has to go in uncontested, because he could just get under his own tower and pull you under it, or pull you in a corner and surround you with the whole team, and now you're stuck in a corner getting beat up by Mojo and his gang. And so that's why I personally love Mojo myself. I think he's my personal favorite, even though I think he's not the best champion in the game. He's not Reese or Bernard, but he's the best in my heart. I will always pretty much run Mojo in my comps just because I love the control aspect of it. I'm either going to pull you under my tower, I'm going to pull you in an unfavorable position to where I'm just going to beat you to death in a corner, and I also can pull you away from objectives. If you're sitting there with Bernard or something, or Brel, and you're sitting waiting for the Swaystone, I can use him to pull you off and put you in an unfavorable spot. Now, will it kill you? No, but it at least allows me time to get what I need done and then get on out. Alright, so next up is Debo. Debo is one of the newer champions to get released, as well as the other 3 down there. So I'll go over them briefly, as we still don't know a lot about their team comps and what they're good at and what they're not good at. But Debo's ability allows him to buff his allies with attack speed, and I believe movement speed. And the only flaw with Debo is that he doesn't attack when he's buffing his allies, and so therefore leaving himself wide open and people can just ignore him. He has a lot of health. You know, Debo without his ability is actually really good. Debo, while using his ability, does minimal damage and the buffs aren't that strong. And so I'm gonna have to put him in the flawed tier at the bottom, because I think Debo has a lot of flaws with him. You're basically saying I can't use my ability because it actually makes me a worse champion, because you're not getting those attacks off. People can just ignore you. The only, and I'll say the only redeemable quality that Debo has, and I really hope that the devs actually lean into this more, his 3rd tier gives a massive speed boost. Now, the speed boost will basically go 0 to hero. You could pop it in your base and instantly go to objective, and now you have control over that objective first. So that's the good thing about it. Now, his ability, like I said, also buffs the champions that you have, but it doesn't debuff the enemy champions. So there's no trade-off, really. So you're losing an attacker while buffing the other 2 that doesn't have a significant amount of buff to it. So in my opinion, whoever's underneath Debo on the enemy team should also be debuffed, and so that would fix the flaws of Debo. But for now, he's going to sit in flawed, as I believe he is unplayable, and I say that from the bottom of my heart. I have tried to play this man for 24 hours, and I could not take a single tower with Debo. It's just impossible versus a good player. Mira. So for Mira's ability is a stacks ability, in which you do a bunch of attacks on a champion, you build up stacks, and then you pop the ability, which does a lot of damage, and guess what? It stuns. And what did we say? Stuns are good in this game. Stuns block Vendrix. Stuns block pretty much anybody from using their ability for a short amount of time. So stuns are key for winning scraps, I guess you could say. When you're scrapping, you definitely need a stun. So that way, if you ever catch somebody out of position, you can immediately capitalize on it. So for Mira, the only weakness, in my opinion, is you have to attack your opponent in order for your ability to work, which all the other champions, you don't have to do that. You could just pop your ability and go about your day. So you got to do a little bit more work with Mira, and that's why I'm going to be putting it under Chetlif in the viable tier, just because you do have to do some work for it. With Chetlif, you just charge forward and you stun. With Mojo, you just launch your hook and grapple in. Those control elements are instant, whereas Mira's a build-up. Now the damage is there. Mira's damage is a lot after the stun, and then the stun lasts for a really long time. You're probably going to get a kill off of it if you get those stacks. So Sahima is a bit of a weird pick here, because Sahima's ability allows her to bounce her chakram through multiple people that are standing still. So she can bounce it through multiple champions, and it will do damage and bounce back in between them. For Sahima's ability to properly work and deal the most damage, they all need to be standing in one stack. Now this is great versus bots or even low-ranking players, but as I've come to learn, newer players, all they need to do is space their units out by 1, and it's usually their ranged unit, and so now Sahima's ability doesn't work anymore. Sahima's ability is great for stealing Swaystone if they're on that, but it's not near as good as Bernard's or Brel's. Can still get around people that Brel can't get around, but I'm gonna have to put Sahima in the viable tier, because while yes, her ability gets shut down due to people spacing out and fanning out their units, it does do a lot of damage, as well as Sahima herself does a lot of damage on her autos. So I think it's a pretty viable option for a team comp, just not the best one like Brel or Naji or Chetlif. You know, you'll have better options. Even Mira, you know, will do a lot more damage to a single target. And usually that's all you need is a single target, and then it's a 3v2, and then you've got the advantage. They're going to retreat anyway. That leaves us with our last one, Dejane. And Dejane's ability is a little tricky. The ability is kind of like a random roulette wheel of a slow, I believe a root, and a stun. So a very control type mage, but you have to spin through the wheel in order to get the one you want, which, ding ding ding, you're correct, we all want the stun, right? The root they can still attack from, and the slow they can still attack from and move. The stun, however, will keep them immobile. They can't use their ability. They are stuck there. While Dejane does have a stun, I think that's the biggest weakness, is to have to spin through that wheel. So I think Dejane goes in the B tier of doable, because it is doable. Dejane's a really good champ otherwise, you know, does a lot of damage and can stun. Rooting could be good. Slow is okay. But with the randomness and the RNG of Dejane, I really think that the champion just can't perform well in a competitive setting, because you're just going to have to cycle through in order to get it. And while you're cycling through, you're just going to get collapsed on by the better team comp. So this is my tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your guys' takes in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. I'm starting to really crack down and work hard on a lot of these videos and get this out for you guys, because I know Glassbreakers means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to you.